500,000 people. That's the entire population, smaller than Denver. In 8 days, they play the defending world champions.
Wait, 500,000 against 46 million?
Stay with me. I'll show you exactly how a team this small got here and why the gap might matter less than you think. This is Cape Verde, ranked 67th in the world. Their first ever World Cup match, ever, against Spain, reigning European champions. Spain hit the crossbar. Spain pushed numbers forward all night. Final score, 0-0.
One game. Could be a fluke.
Then they drew Uruguay, two-time champions. Twice they fought back from behind just to share the points. 2-2. Then they held Saudi Arabia, a third straight draw built on nothing but patience and discipline. 3 matches, 0 losses. A team that didn't exist at a World Cup 2 weeks ago. Did you know Cape Verde just became only the 7th team in history to reach the knockouts without winning a single group match? The first since 1998. Their reward? Lionel Messi. Argentina, round of 32, Miami, July 3rd. Subscribe right now if you want to follow this all the way to kickoff, because this channel is going to track every twist between now and that match, and you do not want to miss how this story actually ends. Here's the open loop I want you to hold on to. There's a detail about this Cape Verde squad that almost nobody outside this tournament knew 2 weeks ago, and it explains everything that's happened so far. I'm coming back to it in a minute. First, the numbers everyone's using to write Cape Verde off.
Finally, let's talk about this properly. Messi has 18 World Cup goals in his career. Cape Verde has scored 2 total in their entire history, which started 2 weeks ago.
That's real. I won't pretend it isn't.
It's not just goals either. Argentina's squad is worth over $900 million. Cape Verde's entire roster is worth $62 million. You could buy their whole team 15 times over with Argentina's bench alone. And that's before we even get to Messi's individual value.
You're right about every number. So answer me this. Did any of those numbers predict the last 2 weeks? Spain's squad alone is worth roughly triple what Cape Verde's entire roster is valued at. And that match still ended scoreless.
No, they didn't predict any of it.
Cape Verde had the ball only 25.7% of the time against Spain, less than a quarter of the match. They still walked away with a point because possession was never the plan. Discipline was the plan. Organized defending built specifically to frustrate a technically superior opponent for 90 long minutes. Could you find Cape Verde on a map 2 weeks ago? Be honest, yes or no? Drop it in the comments, because that's exactly why a country smaller than Denver has the entire football world talking right now, including people who couldn't have told you a single player's name before this tournament started, and including plenty of journalists who had to look up the correct spelling on deadline. Now here's the detail I promised you. 6 players in Cape Verde's starting lineup were born outside the country. 3 in the Netherlands, 1 in Ireland, 1 in France, 1 in Portugal.
Wait, so this isn't even a purely homegrown roster?
It's a diaspora roster, built on purpose, not by accident. The Federation spent years recruiting players with Cape Verdean heritage out of European academies most small nations could never reach on their own, and convinced them to choose this shirt over the countries where they were actually born and trained. Some of them had real interest from the federations of the countries they grew up in. They chose Cape Verde anyway. That's not just passion, that's a strategy that quietly took years to build while nobody outside the Federation was watching. This isn't a new idea in football. Plenty of small nations have talked about leaning on their diaspora for years. What's different here is the execution. Cape Verde's federation built actual scouting relationships in the Netherlands, in Portugal, across the parts of Europe where their immigrant communities settled decades ago, and turned loose family connections into an actual functioning pipeline of talent. It took years before it ever produced a single World Cup appearance. Now it's produced an unbeaten group stage campaign against 3 former champions. And their goalkeeper, Vozinha, is 40 years old, 17 million Instagram followers, a number that's grown fast since this tournament started. He's already joined Dino Zoff and Peter Shilton as the only goalkeepers in their 40s to keep multiple clean sheets at a World Cup. 2 legends from completely different decades of this sport, and now a 40-year-old from an island most people couldn't point to on a map a month ago, standing right beside them in that exact record.
He very nearly didn't make
make this tournament at all, coming back into the squad only after a long spell out of the national team picture. And now, he's the single most recognized face of this entire run. We've all felt this, watching some tiny underdog nation and quietly hoping, against all logic, that they pull off something impossible. There's no reason for it. You don't even support them. You've probably never watched their league or known a single player's name 2 weeks ago. You just feel it anyway, the same way millions of neutral fans around the world have felt it watching Cape Verde these past 2 weeks, checking the score on their phones for a country they couldn't have named a month earlier. Fairy tale or proof that the gap between nations is closing fast? At this World Cup specifically, because of the expanded format? Pick one in the comments. Honestly, I think both are true at the same time, and that's usually how the best stories in this sport actually work. The format gave more small nations a path into the tournament. What Cape Verde did with that path is entirely their own. Their coach, Bubista, is a former Cape Verde international himself, someone who lived the smaller side of this sport his entire career before he ever coached it, going by one name the way only a handful of footballers in history have ever earned the right to. After the Saudi Arabia match, his words were simple: proud to have arrived at this stage, proud to show they're a small country that fights for what it wants. Not a tactical plan, a statement of identity from a man who's never once pretended to be anything other than exactly what his country actually is.
A nice quote doesn't track back a runner in transition though. Identity doesn't stop Messi from finding space.
No, it doesn't on its own, but discipline does, sometimes, and Cape Verde have conceded shockingly little against 3 former World Cup champions in a row, 2 clean sheets and 1 tight 2-2 game against a nation that's lifted this trophy twice. That's not luck repeating itself 3 times in a row. At some point, that's a pattern, the same way Iraq's pattern of losing every match became a pattern in the opposite direction this same tournament. Look at the shape of every match so far. Against Spain, they barely crossed into the attacking third for long stretches, content to absorb pressure for 90 minutes. Against Uruguay, they showed they could attack too, scoring twice in a game most predicted they'd simply survive. Against Saudi Arabia, back to the patient, defensive version of themselves, because that's exactly what the situation called for. A team comfortable changing its identity from match to match isn't accidentally good. That's coaching. So here's the honest version of how this goes wrong for them, because I'm not going to pretend there isn't one. Messi is playing his final World Cup, fully fit, fully motivated, with the best supporting cast he's ever had at this tournament. If Cape Verde sit too deep for 90 straight minutes, one mistake against players of that quality is usually enough. Argentina create those moments more consistently than almost anyone left in this competition, and unlike Spain or Uruguay, they're unlikely to get frustrated and start forcing things. They'll simply keep probing, patiently, until a gap shows itself somewhere on the pitch. There's also the occasion itself to consider. Cape Verde have played 3 group matches in front of crowds that, while large, were nothing close to what a round of 32 match against the defending champions will bring. The noise, the stage, the global attention, all of it arrives at once in Miami, and even disciplined teams can wobble the first time they experience something at that scale.
Right, it only takes one gap, and a team with that much quality will find it eventually. That's just how this usually goes.
Maybe, but do you think Cape Verde even cares about losing at this point? The way a bigger, more established nation might? They've already done more than anyone predicted before a ball was kicked back in their opening match. Every extra minute against the defending champions, every additional moment of this tournament is something this entire country gets to keep forever, regardless of what the scoreline ends up reading on July 3rd. Commit to an answer right now. Do they actually have a chance? Yes or no? I think the gap is real. I also think that gap has mattered less at this World Cup than at any tournament in history, and the last 2 weeks across this entire competition are the proof. Tell me your prediction in the comments, because I want to see who calls this correctly before kickoff, and I'll be checking back the moment that final whistle blows either way.
Fine, I still lean Argentina, comfortably. But 20 minutes ago, I wouldn't have called this worth a conversation at all. And now I'm genuinely curious how it plays out on July 3rd.
That's the whole point. 3 weeks ago, nobody nobody outside Cape Verde was having this conversation either. A tiny archipelago off the coast of West Africa with 6 players who learned this game in Dutch and Irish and French academies, somehow becoming the team an entire global audience is suddenly rooting for, regardless of which country they actually support. Whatever happens in Miami, this run has already changed how the rest of the football world looks at nations this size. Other small federations are watching this exact blueprint right now, taking notes for their own future. 500,000 people, smaller than Denver, and in 8 days, that tiny number walks out against the defending champions of the entire planet, carrying a story no scoreline on July 3rd can ever erase, no matter how the match actually ends.
All right, I'm actually watching this match now.
And speaking of teams nobody saw coming, the goalkeeper who tied a World Cup save record for a nation of just 158,000 people is still out there too. You won't believe what happened next for him. It's on your screen right now, so go tap it before you do anything else.